Sangye charan zogi chonam la chanchu baru dani kyasuchi lagi chajingi pesonangi rola penche sangye rupa sho. Sangye charan zogi chonam la chanchu baru dani kyasuchi lagi chajingi pesonangi rola penche sangye rupa sho. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, Supreme Assembly. By the merits I create through listening to the Dharma, may I become a Buddha in order to benefit all sentient beings.
Thank you, Dr. Nick.
So now let's just do a couple of minutes of meditation on the breath, just to kind of center our minds. So think, we took refuge and generated bodhicitta in that prayer, but just think, sort of reinforce the refuge and bodhicitta. Think the purpose of my life is to lead all sentient beings from suffering to enlightenment. In order to do that, first I have to reach enlightenment myself. And that means studying, meditating on, realizing the entire path to enlightenment. So as part of that process to reach enlightenment, by following the path to enlightenment, I'm going to participate in this session on the short lamrim text, which outlines the entire path to enlightenment, the foundation of all good qualities, written by Lama Tsongkhapa, with a commentary by Khunu Lama Rinpoche. I'm going to study this teaching in order to reach enlightenment for the sake of all sentient beings. Okay, so this is the fourth of four-part series. So yeah, it's the last one. Before we launch into today's session, are there any questions arising from previous ones or anything? Okay. Anyway, if you have any questions at any point, just jump in. It's no problem. So just to reiterate what we've covered in the previous weeks, by looking at this teaching, the foundation of all good qualities is a kind and venerable guru. Correct devotion to him is the root of the path. By clearly seeing this and applying great effort, please bless me to rely upon him with great respect. So that's the first section of the lamrim, the teaching on guru devotion. So then comes what to do once we've generated the devotion to our spiritual teacher. Understanding that the precious freedom of this rebirth is found only once is greatly meaningful and difficult to find again. Please bless me to generate the mind that unceasingly, day and night, takes its essence. So we talked a lot about perfect human rebirth, which is what this verse is about, with the 8 freedoms and 10 richnesses. So if we really understand what this rebirth that we've received this life is, how precious it is, how rare it is, and how useful it is, then we really dedicate ourselves to extracting the essence from it, which means devoting as much energy as we can to the practice of Dharma to reach enlightenment for the sake of all sentient beings. So that gives us a lot of energy to pursue the path, to follow the path from where we are now all the way to the end, and to overcome obstacles very easily as we have this strong determination based on the understanding of the preciousness and usefulness of this perfect human rebirth that we've received. But it doesn't last. This life is as impermanent as a water bubble. Remember how quickly it decays and death comes. After death, just like shadow follows the body, the results of negative and positive karma ensue. So even though we have this perfect human rebirth, it's finishing every moment. So there's no time to lose in practicing Dharma, because if we die before we've purified enough, before we've created enough merit, it's almost guaranteed that we'll be reborn in the lower realms, where we'll stay for a long time before finding another rebirth such as this. So we really have to, understanding impermanence and the imminence of death, we really have to get our act together to practice Dharma from this moment on, and to practice only Dharma. So that's what the teachings on impermanence and death tell us. So that gives us more energy to extract the essence from our perfect human rebirth and, practice Dharma from this moment on as intensively as we can, to try and make every action we do the cause of enlightenment by transforming it with bodhicitta. So the next verse is finding firm and definite conviction in this. Please bless me always to be careful to abandon even the slightest of negativities and to accomplish only virtuous deeds. So that's just talking about karma, and that's what we were talking about last time. And we were talking about purification, and with the four opponent powers. And why we need, so I didn't quite finish that, why we need to use the 4 opponent powers is because there are 4 results of negative karma. So each of those opponent powers counteracts one of these 4 negative karmic results, like the throwing karma that causes us to be reborn in the lower realms, the 2 results similar to the cause, similar to the cause in experience, similar to the cause in habit, and then the 4th one, the environmental result. So the 4 opponent powers for the power of the object, which is taking refuge and generating bodhicitta, the power of regret, recognizing that we've created this or that negative action, and since beginning of this time, we've created numberless negative actions, most of the karmic results of which are still mostly stored in our consciousness, waiting to ripen or to be purified. So before they ripen, we want to purify them. And there's a result similar to the cause in habit, where we tend, the more we create a negative action, the easier it is to do it again. So Lama Zopa Rinpoche says this is kind of the worst of the karmic results, because just we never get out of that pattern of creating negative karma after negative karma and causing ourselves suffering, which is exactly the opposite of what we want. So the opponent power that counteracts that is the power of resolve, or the power of making the vow. When Lama Yeshe first explained these teachings to us, when he was giving us Vajrasattva initiation and a commentary for us to do a retreat back in 1974 at Kopan, he asked us, what's the right English word to explain this opponent power, which is, sometimes called the power of resolve, or the power of the vow, or, anyway, we came up with all kinds of possibilities, none of which satisfied him. So we never actually arrived at the right word. But what he said was, this power is, you have such a clear and deep understanding of the suffering results of negative actions, that there's this, it's kind of a realization that you just know that he said, you'll never go there again. You'll never do that action again. And it's like, if you burn your hand on a hot stove, you don't need to sort of say to yourself, oh, that was stupid, I burned my hand. Now I better make a vow or a promise, or I better resolve never to do that again. Don't need to do, you just know intuitively not to do that again. It's just kind of, it arises sort of automatically. So that's, and that's easy for us. It's easy to come to that conclusion because the connection between the action and the result, the pain of the burnt hand, is so immediate that it's very clear. So with karma, it's not so clear at all. The result of a negative karma we create today may not ripen if it's not purified for 1,000,000 years or 1,000,000 lifetimes. So, we can't make that simple connection unless we meditate and we study karma and we understand our minds pretty deeply. So in the meantime, therefore, we have to make a vow not to do that action again. So that sets up an awareness in our mind of the actions that we should avoid. And the clearer we understand the negative results of these actions, the easier it will be for us not to do them again, and for us to sort of escape from this kind of beginningless hole of bottomless hole of negative karma that we've been creating since beginningless time. And then the fourth opponent power then is the power of the remedy, where we, in the context of the other three opponent powers, we do a practice such as reciting the Vajrasattva mantra, or doing the 35 Buddhas, 35 confession Buddha practice, or reading texts on emptiness and meditating on emptiness, or making holy objects such as tsatsas, or painting tankas, or circumambulating holy objects. There are a number of purifying actions. So I think that's most of them. There are said to be 6 main ones, like the 35 Buddhas practice, studying, meditating, teachings, emptiness, making holy objects, circumambulating holy objects, reciting purifying mantras such as Vajrasattva mantra or the Samaya Vajra Damsik Dorji mantra, practices like that. So the practice of the 4 opponent powers with Vajrasattva mantra is the main practice that we do. So now the next verse says, seeking samsaric pleasures is the door to all suffering. They are uncertain and cannot be relied upon. Recognizing these shortcomings, please bless me to generate the strong wish for liberation. So this is talking about the first of the 3 principal aspects of the path, renunciation. So this is, so renunciation is the mind that recognizes that the suffering we don't want is a result of our own actions, the actions that we ourselves have created through attachment to samsaric pleasure. And that if we want to escape from cyclic existence completely, then we need to renounce, we automatically renounce suffering. We don't want to experience suffering. But what we don't renounce is the cause of suffering, attachment and aversion, these sort of negative minds, these 3 poisonous minds that have been driving our own personal cyclic existence and everybody else's since beginningless time. Ignorance, attachment, aversion. So that's what we should really renounce. If we don't want the result, we need to renounce the cause. If we don't stop creating the cause, we're going to continue experiencing the result. So we need to recognize the ignorance within our mind, the attachment that springs from that, and the aversion or the anger that springs from that. So these are the 3 poisonous minds, as depicted in the Wheel of Life painting that we looked at before, where the hub of the Wheel of Life is the pig, which represents ignorance, and the bird, whether it's a chicken or a peacock, that represents attachment, and the snake that symbolizes hatred. So Khunu Lama Rinpoche says about this verse, whatever beautiful objects we see, we're never satisfied. Whatever pleasant sounds we hear, we're never satisfied. And it's the same with all other objects of the senses. No matter how much television we watch or movies we see, we'll never be satisfied. This is how it is. And all samsaric pleasures are the door to samsaric suffering. No matter how many samsaric pleasures there are, they are of no value. All the past great meditators and holy beings have recognized temporal pleasure as a shortcoming of samsara, as faulty and deceptive. They've never seen samsaric pleasures as valuable or good, which is kind of the opposite to the way we lead our lives. But we know, from experience that, no matter how much we indulge in, movies or music or food or sex or, whatever pleasures we seek in our daily life, it never satisfies us. We're always looking for better. We're always looking for more. And largely it's because we don't, just the way we're brought up, the way the society is, we don't know, we don't realize, we don't understand that there's an alternative. This is like the third noble truth, that the cessation of suffering. That if we can stop agitating our own mind by constantly chasing samsaric pleasures or sense pleasures, if we don't stop agitating our mind, we'll never stop experiencing different kinds of suffering result. So in terms of our actual practice, the way we do this is, first of all, we take refuge. And you know that essentially two reasons or two causes for our taking refuge. But one is understanding the nature of suffering, that we talked about that when we talked about the perfect human rebirth, the suffering of three lower realms, and the different kinds of, even when we're born in the upper realms, when we're born human, we experience all these other different kinds of sufferings, such as the suffering of rebirth, the suffering of illness, the suffering of aging, the suffering of death, the suffering of not getting what we want, the suffering of losing what we have, the suffering of encountering negative circumstances, negative people, negative environments, all this. And just the suffering of having this mind and body that are under the control of delusion and karma, the pervasive suffering. Remember, we talked about that. These three levels of suffering: suffering of suffering, changeable suffering, and the pervasive suffering. So the suffering that changeable suffering is what this verse is talking about, samsaric pleasures. That no matter how much we enjoy these things, it never satisfies us. And but still we're attached to these sufferings. So by acting under the motivated by attachment, we just plant negative karmic seeds in our consciousness that will ripen into these different experiences of suffering. So first we take refuge by having fear of these different levels of suffering. And the second cause then is having confidence in the power of the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha to guide us from this suffering. And then in the Mahayana refuge, the third factor is that we fear these sufferings, not just for ourselves, but for all sentient beings. And we recognize that Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha have the power to release not just ourselves, but all sentient beings from suffering. So motivated by the wish to free all sentient beings from suffering, we take refuge in Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. And once we've taken refuge, what our obligation is to follow the teachings on karma, to stop creating negative karma and to create only positive karma. So, if we look at the lamrim outline, we see there are these three levels of practice: the path of the practitioner of least capability. So that practitioner is motivated by fear of the lower realms and does practices to try to ensure that they're born in the upper realms again and not in the lower realms. Then there's the path of the practitioner of intermediate capability, and there's the path of the practitioner of great capability. So the practitioner of intermediate capability recognizes that even to be born in the upper realms isn't enough, because there's always danger of, as long as one's in samsara, there's always a danger of being reborn in the lower realms. So the only way to really be free of suffering is to escape from cyclic existence altogether, which is what this verse is talking about. Generating strong wish for the bliss of liberation. So in order to do that, we have to practice the three higher trainings: the higher training in moral conduct or in discipline, the higher training in concentration, and the higher training in wisdom. So after taking refuge, the next thing we do in terms of trying to follow karma is take precepts. And so we can take one precept, the basic precept, not to kill, which is the essential obligation of taking refuge anyway. But then we take the other lay precepts. There are 5 basic lay precepts: not to kill, not to steal, not to engage in sexual misconduct, not to lie, and not to use intoxicants. So then, there are other levels of precepts. The 3 kinds of precepts: the pratimoksha precepts, the vows of individual liberation. So these 5 lay precepts are part of that. The other kind of pratimoksha precepts are the vows taken by the monks and nuns. Then on top of those, there are the bodhisattva vows, and on top of those, there are tantric vows. So these are the different levels of precepts. And in terms of the opponent powers, this is the third one, the power, the word that Lama Yeshe could never get out of us, the power of resolve, or the power of the vow, or the power of the determination. So by taking vows, we stop this worst of the 4 karmic results, the tendency to do negative action again and again. So, some people say, well, I don't need to take vows because I don't kill, I don't steal. And that's as good as far as it goes. but it doesn't go all that far. It might, by adhering to not killing, to not stealing, to not lying, not engaging in sexual misconduct, not getting intoxicated, that stops creating negative karma in this life, but it doesn't deal with the countless instances of having created those actions in our beginningless previous lives. So making a vow kind of sends this sort of neutralizing shockwave through our mind, through our consciousness, and it dampens the tendency to do these actions again created in previous lives. So that's why Rinpoche always says that the essence of morality, the essence of discipline, is taking precepts. And as I said before, the thing about precepts is that the more we have, the more we take, the better. The more purely we keep them, the better. The longer we keep them, the better. And the more quickly we purify transgressions, the better. So it's a whole complete practice, and it's the fundamental practice of Dharma, to not create negative actions and to help us know which negative actions are the basic ones we need to avoid. The Buddha taught these 10 non-virtuous actions, the 3 non-virtuous actions of body, the 4 non-virtuous actions of speech, and the 3 non-virtuous actions of mind. Not to kill, not to steal, not to engage in sexual misconduct, not to lie, not to slander, not to use harsh words, not to gossip, and not to generate covetousness or greed in our mind, or ill will or wrong views. So these are the 10 non-virtuous actions. So we need to know what they are, and we need to meditate on them, and we need to recognize them in our own mind, and then we have to determine not to engage in those actions again. And precepts, taking the precepts helps us do that. So where do we start? We start by recognizing what are our worst delusions. Maybe it's anger, maybe it's jealousy, maybe it's pride, maybe it's attachment. And that's the one we should work on first to get rid of or to decrease. And as we get a handle on that, then maybe another one rises to the top, as that becomes the worst. So then we have to knock that on the head. And so gradually, by understanding our own mind and understanding how the delusions function within us and which are the worst, so we gradually chip away at them like that. So the 3 higher trainings, the training in morality is like that. Then the training in concentration is, we've very briefly try to practice of stabilizing meditation at the beginning of these classes when we focus on our breath. But, just doing it for 2 or 3 minutes doesn't really develop our practice of concentration. What it really does is just show us how distracted our mind is and how much work we need to do in order to overcome our distractions and sluggishness, sleepiness in our mind. But the basis for developing concentration is the practice of morality or discipline. We can't keep agitating our mind by doing negative actions and then expect to be able to then all of a sudden sit down and have really good concentration. So if we want to really develop concentration, we probably need to do it in a retreat setting. Even if we meditate for half an hour or even an hour, morning and night, on the breath or on some other kind of stabilizing or concentrating meditation, like a visualization, or the breath, then that's very good if we can, but it's then we have to go out and engage in our work or our daily life and interacting with people, and our mind gets all scattered again. So if we can do a month or 2 or 3 trying to develop concentration, that's it's an essential thing on one hand. On the other hand, it probably seems like a luxury because we don't have that time. So that's our dilemma. How determined are we to develop our Dharma practice? How important do we see it? Do we see it as the most important thing in life, or as a sort of secondary activity? But if we don't develop perfect concentration, then we won't be able to realize emptiness. So that's the third higher training, the higher training in wisdom. So in order to free ourselves from suffering and from cyclic existence, we need to realize emptiness, the ultimate nature of our own mind. In order to do that, we need to have perfect concentration. In order to do that, we have to have pure morality. So you can see how in theory it works. Okay, so the next verse says, led by this pure thought, the pure thought of seeking liberation from cyclic existence, mindfulness, alertness, and great caution arise. The root of the teachings is keeping the pratimoksha vows. So please bless me to accomplish this essential practice. Well, I've already been talking about that. So Khunu Lama says, with this next verse, we request blessings to succeed in the essential practice of keeping the vows of individual liberation. There are 7 different levels of pratimoksha ordination, such as bhikshu and bhikshuni vows, and keeping the pratimoksha vows is the root of the teaching and the main cause of liberation. Supported by the pure thought of wanting to receive nirvana, liberation, we should keep our precepts with great remembrance, conscientiousness, and care. We shouldn't be like those practitioners who say that they're focusing on tantric practice and therefore don't need to concern themselves with sutra practices like keeping the pratimoksha vows. We should observe whatever pratimoksha vows, the vows of individual liberation, we have taken with great care. First, it's necessary to generate the mind wanting to abandon samsara. Without renunciation of samsara, we cannot receive even Hinayana nirvana, the liberation of the Shravakayana and the Pratyeka Buddhayana. So, we divide all the teachings of the Buddha into the Hinayana, or the lesser vehicle, or the Mahayana, the great vehicle. So the goal of the lesser vehicle, the Hinayana, is nirvana, or liberation from cyclic existence. So there are, within the Hinayana, yana means vehicle, like a car is a vehicle. It takes us from where we are to where we want to go. The spiritual, the inner vehicle, is the yana, which takes us from the spiritual level that we're at to the spiritual level we want to attain, whether it's liberation or enlightenment. So the Hinayana, the smaller vehicle, lesser vehicle, takes us to the to liberation from psychic existence, but it doesn't take us to full enlightenment, the great liberation. So to do that, we have to follow the Mahayana, the great vehicle. So within the Hinayana, there are these two vehicles that Khunu Lama Rinpoche mentions, the Shravakayana, the hero vehicle, or the Pratyeka Buddha, the solitary realizer. So the hearers, so-called the Shravakas, are those who listen to the teachings of the Buddha, and then on the basis of that go off and practice in retreat to attain liberation. The solitary realizers are those who, through previous practice in past lives, having heard many teachings, are reborn with intuitive understanding, and then can go off into the forest or into retreat, into caves, and meditate without necessarily having received many teachings in this life. And they can attain liberation through their individual practice. So those are called the solitary realizers, Pratyeka Buddhas. So then Khunu Lama Rinpoche says, then after generating the mind renouncing samsara is necessary to generate bodhicitta. Without bodhicitta, without becoming a Mahayana practitioner, the great vehicle, without following the great vehicle, which leads to enlightenment, we cannot receive enlightenment. Therefore, it's necessary to practice bodhicitta. The next verse reads, just as I've fallen into the sea of samsara, so have all mother migratory beings. Bless me to see this, train in supreme bodhicitta, and bear the responsibility of freeing migratory beings. Look at yourself, he says. Since beginningless time, you've been suffering incredibly by wandering endlessly through the various realms of cyclic existence, mainly the hell, hungry ghost, and animal realms. And just as you have been suffering in samsara since beginningless time, so too have all other samsaric sentient beings. Thinking in this way, cultivate bodhicitta, or, as the prayer says, please bless me to receive bodhicitta by understanding this. And the next verse says, clearly recognizing that I will not achieve enlightenment by developing bodhicitta without practicing the three types of morality, please bless me to practice the bodhisattva vows with great energy. In order to receive, so the commentary is, in order to receive aspirational bodhicitta, the thought wishing to receive enlightenment for the sake of all sentient beings, and engaged bodhicitta, actually following the path to enlightenment, it's necessary to practice the three aspects of the perfection of morality. So this is what it means, the three types of morality. The morality of abstaining from negativity, which we already talked about. The morality of creating all virtue, so practicing only, creating only positive karma, practicing the avoiding the 10 non-virtuous actions and practicing their opposites, which are the 10 virtuous actions. And the morality of working for sentient beings. Although this verse mentions specifically the 3 divisions of morality, it also refers to the practice of all 6 perfections. So there are 2 types of bodhicitta, sometimes called the wishing bodhicitta and the entering bodhicitta. So the wishing bodhicitta is thinking, oh, it would be really nice to develop bodhicitta. I'd like to develop bodhicitta, the cause of enlightenment at some point. You know, seeing its benefits and aspiring to develop, practice and develop bodhicitta. So that, you know, that's a bit like saying, well, you know, I'd like to go to have a vacation in this place or that place. That'd be nice. You're looking at pictures of, you know, tropical isles and all this stuff. So that's kind of like that's the aspiration to go to that place. The entering, the actual embarking on the journey, you know, buying a ticket and getting on the plane and flying there. That's the end. That's the actual bodhicitta. So that's then, you know, actually following the path by practicing these 3 kinds of morality with the motivation of wanting to reach enlightenment for the sake of all sentient beings. So, you know, the equivalent of sort of getting on the plane and buying a ticket and getting on the plane is taking the bodhisattva vows. So there are 64 of those. There are 18 root vows and 46 branch vows. So you can find them. You know, we don't have time to go into them right now, but you can find there's a book on bodhisattva vow published, teachings on the bodhisattva vow by Geshe Sonam Rinchen. I think it's called the Bodhisattva Vow, published by Snow Lion. Now it's Shambhala. You know, you'll find the Bodhisattva vows online very easily. And you know, these days it's quite easy to take those vows. His Holiness gives them online quite often. When His Holiness gives a teaching on bodhicitta, he's, you know, if you go to dalailama.com, you can see when his next teaching is, and you can see videos of his previous teachings. I'm not sure if you can look at a video of a teaching he gave a month or a year ago, where he gave the bodhisattva vows, and I don't know if you can take the bodhisattva vows from those past teachings, but he does it often enough. So if you really feel like you really want to, if you haven't taken the bodhisattva vows, then watch for the next time His Holiness is giving them, and you can take bodhisattva vows from Chenrezig himself. Anyway, now things are opening up a bit in the States. A lot of people are vaccinated and centres are reopening, and teachers are starting to give teachings in person. And I don't know if there's a plan for Geshe Sherab to come back to TNL, but if maybe you can request him to give the bodhisattva vows if you want to take them in person from a Lama. And with the bodhisattva, you know, once you, with refuge and the pratimoksha vows, once you've taken them, you don't really need to take them again. You take them for life. You take refuge for life. So that should be it. But with the bodhisattva vows, you can take them again and again. You can take them yourself every day, and you should do a certain practice like the 6-session yoga, which people who've taken certain tantric initiations have a commitment to do the 6-session yoga each day. There are 3 sessions in the morning and 3 sessions at night, 6 sessions. So part of that is taking the bodhisattva vows. So there's a short way of practicing the 6-session yoga. There are 9 verses, or there's the long practice, which is much more powerful, and the taking bodhisattva vows is more clearly spelled out in the long 6-session yoga. And there are also commentaries on the 6-session yoga where more explanations are given. So those are the 2 kinds of bodhicitta, the aspirational and the entering, or the engaged bodhicitta. And then on the basis of taking the bodhisattva vows and engaging in bodhicitta, as well as practicing these 3 types of morality, Khunu Lama says it also means studying and practicing the 6 perfections. So there's a book published recently by Wisdom on Lama Zopa Rinpoche's teachings on the 6 perfections. And there's another book recently published by Wisdom, Lama Zopa Rinpoche's teachings on the 4th perfection, patience. So if you get those 2 books and study them and meditate on them, then you'll be doing what Khunu Lama Rinpoche recommends. So the 6 perfections are the perfection of morality, of generosity or giving, perfection of morality, perfection of patience, the 3rd one, not the 4th one, as I said, the practice of effort or enthusiastic perseverance, practice of concentration, and the practice of wisdom. So those are the 6 perfections. So there are, quite a number of books that deal with these 6 perfections. There's another book by Geshe Sonam Rinchen on the 6 perfections, and there are 2 or 3 books on His Holiness's teachings on the perfection of wisdom. They're based on the 9th chapter of Shantideva's Bodhicharyavatara, Guided Bodhisattva's Way of Life. And of course, there are all the teachings on these topics in the Great Lamrim and in Liberation in the Palm of Your Hand. And now this amazing book just been published by Wisdom, the middle-length Lamrim. And also Wisdom have Pabonka Rinpoche's commentary on the middle-length Lamrim. I think it's called The Essence of the Vast and Profound. I mean, there's so much material available now, available in English, which hasn't been available before. So we're, extremely fortunate to have this perfect human rebirth at this particular time. My perfect human rebirth 50 years ago wasn't nearly as good as it is now. Of course, I wasted just as much, but we have so many more opportunities to study and practice, through the kindness of the lamas and the kindness of these translators who underwent many hardships to study the Tibetan language over many years, sometimes in difficult circumstances, so that they could translate these important texts for us who don't speak Tibetan. So again, you know, now that these things are available, it's a huge loss if we don't study and meditate on these incredible teachings. And I think also it's good to support the publishers that publish these books by buying them, just to so that they can publish more books in future. I don't have any skin in that game, but just mentioning it. So it also refers to the practice of all 6 perfections. However, the following verse refers more specifically to the last 2 perfections, concentration and wisdom. So Lama Tsongkhapa says, by pacifying distractions to wrong objects and correctly analysing the meaning of reality, please bless me to generate quickly within my mind stream the unified path of calm abiding and special insight. Khunu Lama Rinpoche says, here Lama Tsongkhapa is saying that our minds are always distracted by objects of the senses, for example, attractive visual forms or interesting sounds. Our minds are always concentrated on those. Calm abiding or mental quiescence, shamatha, is a kind of reversal of our normal attraction to sense objects, the opposite of distraction. It is the control of single-pointed concentration. Shama means peace, ta means one-pointedness. Shama or shanti. Shamatha means one-pointedness. To be combined with penetrative insight. This is to be combined with penetrative insight. So when we meditate on the breath or on a visualization, such as image of the Buddha, visualize image of the Buddha, we practice developing calm abiding, or shine in Tibetan, shamatha in Sanskrit, by focusing our mind on an object and gradually getting rid of distractions. So if you study the teachings on developing concentration, you're sure if I have it. This teaching of Khunu Lama Rinpoche that we're looking at is in this book, Teachings from Tibet, and there are a bunch of other teachings. One of the chapters in this is called Developing Single-Pointed Concentration, which is a teaching by Gelek Rinpoche. I thought I had put in here, maybe it's online. This book is online. There's what they call the Shine chart. There are 9 stages of developing single-pointed concentration. And there's a chart indicating your progress along this path. If we created a separate website called teachingsfromtibet.com, and on that site there's a teaching by Geshe Rapton on developing concentration, and I know that the the Shini chart is there. Teachings from Tibet.com, and the teaching is called The Graduated Path to Liberation by Geshe Rabden, I believe. So the chart, you can find the chart there. So, you know, if you haven't had teachings on that, you could ask Geshe Sherab or Gendon to give teachings on developing shamatha and giving an explanation of that chart. It's very important to develop single point of concentration. And then once we have, then instead of focusing on our breath or on a visualization or, you know, and if we're practicing Tantra, if we had the initiation, we can visualize ourselves as a deity, and then we can develop concentration. Our object of concentration is ourself in the aspect of the deity. So if you practice the Guru Shakyamuni Buddha meditation that Rinpoche, Lama Zopa Rinpoche has taught, you get that from FPMT. You can visualize yourself as the Buddha. And you can also, by visualizing yourself as the Buddha, you can also develop your concentration by focusing on that. So you can do that without actually initiation. So when we do that sort of meditation, there are, in the context of tantric practice, we're developing clarity. So we have to develop clarity of ourself as the deity, and also what's called divine pride. So, you know, developing conviction that I am enlightened, I am Manjushri, I am Chenrezig, I am Tara, you know, whatever the practice you're doing is. So you can't do that without initiation generally, but if you're visualizing yourself as Guru Shakyamuni Buddha, you can develop clarity and divine pride of being Buddha. And that sort of comes at the end of the Guru Shakyamuni Buddha visualization. I don't know that we practice that here, but you know, it's a great meditation to do. So as I mentioned in the yanas, you know, the Hinayana has these two divisions that Khunu Lama also mentioned, the Shravaka yana and the Pratyeka Buddha yana. The Mahayana also has two divisions, the Paramita yana, the perfection vehicle, and the Vajrayana, you know, the tantric vehicle. So the Paramitayana is, or the perfection vehicle. So there's 6 perfections. The word for perfections in Sanskrit is paramitas. I'm not quite sure where the accent, parameters maybe, I don't know, parameters. So by following that path, it takes 3 countless great eons to reach enlightenment. So gradually, life after life, as you're following the bodhisattva path, perfecting one perfection after the other. You know, generosity, morality, patience, effort, concentration, wisdom. So 3 countless great eons is a really long time. But gradually, by following that path, we pass from the first bodhisattva level to the second to the third. So there are 10 bodhisattva levels that we have to traverse to reach enlightenment. So by following this gradual path of the bodhisattva, we eventually reach enlightenment. Now, for some practitioners, for some bodhisattvas, that's extremely painful, that it's so slow to reach enlightenment, that it takes that long before they can become enlightened and benefit sentient beings in the ultimate way. So for those practitioners who have unbearable great compassion and who have very sharp intellect, the Buddha taught Tantra, or the Vajrayana, the lightning vehicle, or the diamond vehicle, depending how you translate Vajra. And by following that, we can reach, enlightenment in a single lifetime, or, by following various practices in 7 lifetimes or 16 lifetimes. So much, much more quickly. And so the Paramitayana is sometimes called the causal vehicle. So that is, it's called the causal vehicle because we practice the cause now in order to get the future result. So we practice the 6 perfections in order to get the eventual result of enlightenment. The Vajrayana, the tantric vehicle, is called the resultant vehicle because we use the result as the path. We take the future result, we bring the future result, enlightenment, into the present. So that's what I'm talking about. We visualize ourselves as enlightened already, as the deity. So in order to do this practice, we need to have initiation from a qualified Vajra master, and then we need to receive teachings on that practice, which we can only receive once we've had the initiation, once the empowerment, once we've been empowered, or we've received permission to do the practice and to visualize ourselves as the deity. So there we bring the future result into the present. So we're practicing the result. So that's why it's called the resultant vehicle. And since we're practicing taking the result as a path, it's much quicker to attain the result. But along with that, we need to take, we need to follow the earlier practices, the pratimoksha vows, the bodhisattva vows, and then on that basis, take the tantric vows. So tantric vows, there are 22 vows. And so also with Tantra, there are, 4 classes of Tantra. And so with highest yoga Tantra, we take these tantric vows. There are 14 root vows and 8 branch vows in the tantric vows. So actually you can find those online, I'm sure. Well, I know. And we're not supposed to study or know what they are before we've had initiation. But, these days, not much is secret anymore. So, and I think the reason that the vows and the practices and so on were kept secret is because people who haven't had the proper education in the lamrim And, lamrim really is the fundamental basis for practicing Tantra. The three principal aspects of the path: renunciation, bodhicitta, and right view of emptiness. So if you look at that little booklet, the free booklet that we published 20 years ago, called The Essence of Tibetan Buddhism, a couple of teachings by Lama Yeshe. The first half of the book is on the three principal aspects of the path, which is a teaching Lama gave in France in 82. And the second half of the book, The Essence of Tibetan Buddhism, is an introduction to Tantra, which Lama taught in California in 1980. So that really sums up the entire, in a very small little booklet, but really profound teachings, essential teachings on the three principal aspects of the path, the lamrim, and the practice of Tantra, which is done on the basis of understanding or even realization of the lamrim. So I was talking about developing single-pointed concentration by focusing on an object. If one of the most powerful ways of developing single concentration is by the tantric method of developing it through visualization of ourself as the deity and developing clarity of ourself as the deity, and then generating divine pride. I am the Buddha. I am Tara. And the spirit of the tantric vows, well, the spirit of the pratimoksha, the vows of individual liberation, is renunciation of samsara. The spirit, or the essence of the bodhisattva vows, those 64 vows, the essence of those is abandoning self-cherishing and developing cherishing others. Developing the mind that the happiness of others is more important than my own. And then the spirit, or the essence of the tantric vows, is abandoning the dualistic view. So along with that, if we're really trying to practice Tantra, we're supposed to see our environment as a pure land, as see other sentient beings as the deity, as enlightened beings. We should hear all sound that we hear is mantra, and all thoughts as the play of the enlightened mind. So those are all very difficult perceptions to have a glimpse of, let alone see on a longer term basis, But anyway, we know the direction in which we're headed, and, this is one of the benefits of understanding the entire outline of the lamrim. Even though we're way back here, we haven't even realized perfect human rebirth. At the fifth Kopan course in 1973, there were a couple of hundred people there. And at one point, Rinpoche looked around, was in a tent at the back of the Kopan Gompa at that time. There were This is the old Kopan Gompa. There were too many people at the fifth course. The fourth course was in the Gompa, and that was pretty crowded already. So for the fifth, there are about 120 people there. The fifth course, there are about 200 people. This is in the fall of 73. And we had put up this big tent in the back of in the backyard of the Kopan Gompa. And Rinpoche looked around the tent and he says, if one person in this tent has a realization of the perfect human rebirth in this life, that will be like an amazing thing. There's 200 people there. If one person in this life were to realize the very first, essentially the very first teaching in the lamrim, I mean, there's this huge long path that stretches out from the teaching on the perfect human rebirth. You look at the outline, lamrim outline, detailed one, you can just see how many steps there are. If one person realizes the very first lamrim realization out of these 200, will be an amazing thing. I don't know if anyone has yet. I haven't. So, I mean, just to put things in perspective. So, as I always say that, well, I don't always say, I always repeat. Lama Tsongkhapa had a vision of Manjushri. I think when he was 10 years old, he was in retreat and Manjushri appeared to him in person. It was like in person. It was like he was in the room with him, like we're in the room with another person. It wasn't even by Zoom or anything, He was actually in the room. And there was no internet in Tibet in the 14th century. So Lama Tsongkhapa asked Manjushri, what is the way to have realizations? So we have the three wisdoms that we're supposed to try and develop. The wisdom of hearing, when we hear a teaching or we read a teaching for the first time, we learn something new. So when we learn something new, we've eradicated the ignorance of that topic. We didn't know about it, we were ignorant of that topic. We heard a teaching, we read a book, something, we've eradicated that ignorance. It's a very superficial level of knowledge. It's knowledge nonetheless. Then we might think, oh, that doesn't sound right, So then we think about it, we contemplate on it, we develop, we analyze the teaching, we develop the second wisdom, the wisdom of contemplation, where we think about this topic, is this right or not? We come to a conclusion as to what's correct and what's incorrect. So coming to the correct conclusion is the wisdom of contemplation. And then once we've arrived at that intellectual understanding, then we have to focus on that conclusion with our single-pointed concentration and sort of burn that correct understanding into our consciousness, displace the ignorance in our mind with wisdom of that topic. So as I said, there are all these thousands and thousands of steps on the path to enlightenment. Each one is a topic to be understood, to be meditated, to be contemplated and arrived at a conclusion, and then to be focused on and to displace the ignorance in our mind. That's the wisdom of meditation. So to gain the wisdom of meditation, to have the realization for that topic to become real for our mind, for it to become part of our basic consciousness instead of the ignorance that was there before. In order to do that, to have that realization, Lama Tsongkhapa asked Manjushri, how do we get realizations? So Manjushri told Lama Tsongkhapa, the way to have realizations is to meditate on the topic, on the subject. That is the seed of the realization. So whether it's beginningless mind or perfect human rebirth or renunciation, bodhicitta, emptiness, whatever the topic is, and there are hundreds, thousands of them. That's the seed of the realization. You have to meditate on the topic. But along with that, he said there are three things that have to be done together. First is meditating on the topic, which is the seed of the realization. Along with that, we have to practice purification and creation of merit. So those are, two sides of the same coin. And the third thing is we have to pray to the Guru as oneness with the deity. And ask for blessings of the Buddhas. So those are the three things that have to be done together. So meditating on the lamrim itself is not enough. We have to purify and create merit, and we have to get inspiration by meditating on our Guru as oneness with the deity. So to unpack that. Well, we know what purification and creation of merit is. Often the same practice will do both, create merit and purify the mind. So the 7-limb practice that we always do is the essence of purification and creation of merit. So prostration, offering, confession. So we know what confession is. It's a practice of the 4 opponent powers. So we don't just say, oh, naughty boy, I did this. We have to practice the 4 opponent powers. That's confession. Rejoicing. Rinpoche always emphasizes how important that practice is. And if you're ever doing the 7-limb practice with Rinpoche, he will always stop at the rejoicing and then go into that in detail. Rejoice at the merit of the Buddhas, rejoice at the merit of the Bodhisattvas, rejoice at the merit of our Guru, of the Buddha, Gurus, Buddhas, Bodhisattvas, rejoice at the merit of the Arhats, and rejoice even at the merit created by ordinary practitioners. So all different levels of rejoicing. Then we request the teacher to stay until the end of samsara, and then beseech the teachers to give teachings, and then we dedicate the merit. So those are the 7 limbs that contain the essence of purification and creation of merit. So of course, each one of those has hours of, months of teachings that could be given on it. Prostration, offering, confession, rejoicing, requesting, beseeching, and dedicating. 7 limbs. So those practices have to be done to prepare our mind. So it's like, you have a seed of a flower seed. You want to grow beautiful flowers. The seed itself isn't enough. Of course, without the seed, you're not going to get the flower. But the seed has to be planted in proper ground. The ground has to be purified or prepared of rocks and broken glass and weeds, and everything has to be taken out. Has to be nice, rich earth. It has to be fertilized. Then you need water and sunshine. So all these things, if all those things are done, and you plant the seed, the flower will grow beautifully. And it also needs sunshine, so that's like requesting the blessings of the guru. So as Rinpoche once said, we have to open our devotional hole, which I always thought was a kind of quaint expression. And I imagined it as, we have this, third eye sort of, you have to somehow open our mind. So at the moment, our minds are kind of closed. So we open our mind, because out there are infinite Buddhas and Bodhisattvas wanting us to reach enlightenment as quickly as possible and sending us all this energy, and our gurus and Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. But our minds are closed. None of it's getting in because our skull is too thick, So we have to open our mind to let the blessings come in. And if we're practicing Tantra and visualizing the deity, we have to see the deity is a manifestation of our guru. To see the guru as oneness with the deity and one with all the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. So basically, as Rinpoche called it, the guru omniscient mind. So the omniscient mind of the Buddhas is the ultimate guru, and it manifests. Since we're not enlightened, we can't communicate with the Dharmakaya, with the omniscient mind of the Buddha. So then the omniscient mind has to manifest in different ways according to our karma. So for higher bodhisattvas, it manifests as the Sambhogakaya, the enjoyment body. For ordinary human beings, it manifests as the Buddha, as Shakyamuni Buddha, or in less fortunate times, such as these, as our guru. So we see that our guru is really a manifestation of the enlightened mind appearing before us according to our karma, in an aspect with which we can communicate. So you'll see when we do these practices like Guru Puja or other, the Jorcha, that there's a section where we pray to the lineage of the gurus. So we see how the enlightened mind has manifested as this lineage of teachers passing on the oral tradition from one to the next, from enlightened master to disciple who becomes enlightened master, passes to their disciples, and so on and so on. So the teachings that we receive these days have come to it. They come to us in an unbroken succession of teachings from enlightened masters, from the Buddha himself down to the present day. So this is an amazing, precious thing that we also can receive, this unbroken lineage of teachings from the Buddha through the Indian masters, through the Tibetan masters, and through, His Holiness's tutors and His Holiness and Lama Yeshe and Lama Zopa and our other teachers who have received this transmission. So the way we get realizations of the lamrim is by doing these preliminary practices of purification, creation, and merit, praying to Guru as oneness with the deity, receiving the blessings, the inspiration, and then meditating on the actual teaching, studying, thinking about it, and focusing on it. So it's a process. So please bless me to generate quickly within my mind stream the unified path of calm abiding and special insight. So when we're developing single point of concentration, we have different objects which we focus on. But once we've achieved it, the object of our concentration becomes the teachings on emptiness. So first we have to receive and study the teachings on emptiness, then we have to think about them and try to understand them and come to a clear intellectual understanding of emptiness. And then we have to go beyond that to have a direct experience or direct perception of emptiness, which we can only have if we've practiced pure moral conduct and developed single point of concentration. So then we attain the, then we realize emptiness and can attain liberation from cyclic existence. So here Lama Tsongkhapa is saying that our minds are always distracted by objects of the senses. For example, attractive visual forms, interesting sounds. Our minds are always concentrated on those. I read that. Shamatha. This is to be combined with penetrative insight. In Tibetan, the phrase Yangdag Pa Jogpa means concentrating on absolute nature. So that's what I was just saying. In this prayer, Lama Tsongkhapa asks for blessings to quickly achieve the path that unifies shamatha and vipassana. So shamatha is calm abiding, or single point of concentration, we can call it. And vipassana is higher insight into the nature of reality, insight into emptiness, right view of emptiness. When we achieve this path, we are close to enlightenment. Up to this point, Lama Tsongkhapa has been talking about the general training of the mind in the Paramitayana path, the path of the perfections. Next, he talks about Tantra. So having become a pure vessel by training in the general path, please bless me to enter the holy gateway of the fortunate ones, the supreme Vajra vehicle. So that's the Vajrayana. So this current period we're in is called the fortunate eon. And during this fortunate eon, 1,000 Buddhas appear. They appear when the karma is right, they give teachings, and then eventually the teachings, the people degenerate, and the teachings degenerate and disappear. And then there's a long dark period, and then the next Buddha, then eventually all the negative karma is burnt off, and the karma is good enough, the karma of sentient beings is good enough for the next founding Buddha to appear, the next of the 1,000 Buddhas to appear and give teachings, and then they flourish, and then they disintegrate, and then there's a dark period. So like that. So Guru Shakyamuni Buddha is the fourth of the 1,000 Buddhas of this fortunate eon. The next one will be Maitreya. He'll be the fifth. And then it'll go on like that until 1,000 Buddhas. So it's said that of these 1,000 Buddhas, only 3 teach Tantra. First one, the fourth one, Guru Shakyamuni Buddha, and the last. And it's not because the others don't know Tantra. Every enlightened mind knows the same as every other enlightened mind. It's because the karma of the sentient beings is such that they're not receptive. They don't have enough compassion, or they don't have enough, they're not smart enough to practice Tantra. So Guru Shakyamuni Buddha was one of the only 3 Buddhas of the 1,000 that teach Tantra. So that's another, it's kind of like the 11th richness. You know, we had 8 freedoms and 10 richnesses. The 11th richness really for us is to be born in the presence of the teachings, or at the time of the teachings of a Buddha who taught Tantra. because you can see, as hard enough as it is to have perfect human rebirth, to have a perfect human rebirth at a time when tantric teachings exist, and there are Vajra masters, there are teachers who can give empowerments, who can give tantric vows, who can give commentaries, who can transmit the sadhanas, the methods of accomplishment to us so that we can practice Tantra. It's like exceptionally rare. So we're doubly fortunate. So we should try to strengthen our connection with the Vajrayana teachings as much as we can. And in that way, we can ensure that in future rebirths we'll be born at a time when there are Vajra masters and tantric teachings available. Supreme Vajra vehicle, Khunu Lama Rinpoche. In other words, he's saying here, please bless me to achieve the Vajrayana path, which allows me to receive enlightenment in this lifetime. If you follow the general Paramita Yana path, it can take you a long time to collect the necessary merit and reach enlightenment, as long as 3 countless great eons. Guru Shakyamuni Buddha, for example, had great energy, but it still took him that long to receive enlightenment. If you follow the Vajrayana path, it's much quicker. If you fully observe the fundamental practice of keeping the tantric vows and samayas, or pledges, or the commitments, purely, the practice of Vajrayana can lead you to enlightenment in 1 or perhaps 16 lifetimes. It's like the difference between going somewhere by airplane or train. The tantric path is like a plane. The Paramita Yana path is like a train. It's actually more like walking. There are 2 types of realizations, or siddhi, or accomplishment involved. There are general realizations, of which there are 8, such as the attainment of the sword, the attainment of the eye medicine, and so forth. So these are different kinds of tantric realization. And the sublime realization, which is enlightenment itself. The foundation for attaining these 2 realizations is perfect observation of the vows and pledges, as Lama Tsongkhapa makes clear in the next verse. At that time when we're entering the Vajra vehicle, the basis of accomplishing the 2 attainments is keeping pure vows and samayas. As having become firmly convinced of this, please bless me to protect these vows and pledges like my life. Here he says, please bless me to observe the vows and pledges just as I take care of my life, because he thinks that in order to achieve the uncreated or effortless stage, it's more important to observe the vows and pledges, the foundation of all realizations, than to take care of this temporal life. The next verse alludes to the 4 classes of Tantra, the Kriya, Charya, Yoga, and Mahayana Yoga Tantras. Then, having realized the importance of the 2 stages, the essence of the Vajrayana, by practicing with great energy, never giving up the 4 sessions, please bless me to realize the teachings of the Holy Guru. So the main form of Tantra that we should practice is the highest Yoga Tantra, which includes father tantras such as Yamantaka and the mother tantras such as Heruka and Kalachakra. This class of Tantra also includes the graduated path of generation, the Kerim, and completion, the Dzogrim stages. So that's what's talking about, the 2 stages, the essence of the Vajrayana. The main form of one tantric teaching likens these two stages to a flower and its smell. Without the flower, there's no smell of the flower. Similarly, without the generation stage, there's no way to practice the completion stage. There are different ways of dividing up the day into sessions, like 4 sessions of 6 hours each, 2 in the day and 2 in the night, or 6 sessions of 4 hours each, 3 in the day and 3 in the night. So generally when we're doing a tantric retreat, usually we settle into 4 sessions a day. One before dawn, one before lunch, one in the afternoon, and one in the evening. So that's in retreat. Now, for these great yogis, their whole life is retreat, no matter what they were doing. But I'm not quite sure how, without being in retreat and doing formal sessions, how you divide it up. If you're going into a long retreat, like a 3-month retreat, Vajrasattva retreat, which, really is the very least we should try and manage in our life, at least once, to do 3-month Vajrasattva retreat. Lama Yeshe explained, I think he quoted Lama Tsongkhapa, says when you start a longish retreat, the first sessions should be short. You should do many short sessions, maybe even 10 or 12 a day, so that, when you finish each session, your mind is fresh and you're looking forward to the next one. If we start our retreat and immediately start doing long sessions, our mind can get very tired and start even getting aversion to the practice, So we should bring our mind along gradually, skillfully. So they said the shape of a retreat should be like a barley grain, or I guess a wheat grain, It's pointed at the end, then it gradually thickens, and then it tapers off. So that's how our retreat sessions should be. Short ones getting gradually longer, then the main body of the retreat, they should be, a couple of hours, 2.5 hours, depending how it's going, really. And then when we're coming to the end of the retreat, again, taper them off. Shorter sessions, not just finish abruptly with 4 long sessions a day. So what else is he saying there? So there's a really good book by Wisdom published by Kurti Senchab Rinpoche. I forget what it's called. The Practice of Tantra, perhaps, something like that. That's to understand Tantra, that's a really fantastic book. Kurti Senchab Rinpoche, you find it, Wisdom Publications, Kurti Senchab Rinpoche Tantra. If you Google that, it'll come up right away, I think. Found it? Anybody? Anyway, you can easily find it.
Hello, Dr. Nick, I'll find it.
Yeah, you'll find it. So to get an overview of Tantra and understand Tantric practice, that's a really excellent book. The next verse says, like that, may the gurus who show the noble path and the spiritual friends who practice it have long lives. Please bless me to pacify completely all outer and inner hindrances. So here we pray for blessings for our gurus who show us the noble path and our spiritual friends who follow it correctly to live long lives, and for ourselves to be able to pacify outer and inner hindrances. Outer hindrances are, for example, external enemies, other living beings who harm us and disturb our Dharma practice. Inner hindrances are such things as sicknesses that afflict our body and negativities that afflict our mind. We ask for blessings to pacify all those hindrances. And the last verse is, in all my lives never separated from perfect gurus, may I enjoy the magnificent Dharma. By completing the qualities of the stages and paths, may I quickly attain the state of Vajradhara. So Vajradhara is the primordial Buddha, the ultimate enlightened mind. It's sort of the essence of Vajrayana practice, the goal of Vajrayana practice. So it's very important to make this kind of aspiration, never separate from perfect gurus. You know, that should be in our mind all the time, every day. What for? To enjoy the magnificent Dharma and to quickly attain the qualities of the stages and the paths. You know, the 10 bodhisattva stages or the five stages, and the paths, the 10 stages, the 5 paths, and quickly attain enlightenment. We pray that in all future lives, may we never be separated from perfect gurus, because the guru is the root of the path. Even though there's benefit in simply meeting a guru, the actual purpose of doing so is to practice. Therefore, we pray to enjoy the Dharma through having met a guru and to follow the guru correctly in order to realize the grounds and paths and thereby quickly achieve the enlightened state of Vajradhara. So this is a brief explanation of this prayer, the foundation of all good qualities, which, although short, is a very precious teaching. It contains all the important essential points to the path of the path to enlightenment. I received this teaching, Khunu Lama Rinpoche says, I received this teaching from His Holiness the Dalai Lama in Sarna. And I received this teaching from Khunu Lama Rinpoche. I was there when he gave this teaching in Nepal in 75. And still struggling to understand it, but, you know, hope springs eternal. Also received this teaching from Choden Rinpoche, and I've received it from Lama Zopa Rinpoche. I think maybe from other lamas, but, you know, I'm very bad at remembering those important things. You know, the lamas say that you should keep a diary of all the teachings and initiations and the commitments, all the teachings and initiations you've received and the commitments you've made. I only heard that after about 20 or 30 years, so I figured, well, no point now, which was probably wrong also, but I hope it's in here somewhere. You know? Then Khunu Lama says, you know, there are 5 great branches of knowledge: sound, logic, hygiene, handicrafts, and inner knowledge. Sound, logic, hygiene, handicrafts, and inner knowledge. Outer knowledge has been well developed in the West. I've also heard about Western psychology, which is a study of mind, but although I don't know much about it, I'm sure it's not like the inner knowledge of Buddha Dharma. Also, there are other religions like Christianity, and they also have a kind of inner knowledge, but again, it's nothing like Buddha Dharma. All the many non-Buddhist religions have their qualities, but they're not like Buddha Dharma. Within Christianity, you find Catholicism, Protestantism, and so forth. They all have their own views, but they don't talk about view like Buddha Dharma does. They don't talk about absolute nature, reality. Non-Buddhist religions do have a kind of view. They believe in the self-existent I, but this is precisely what we need to abandon. According to Buddha Dharma, the self-existent I is the wrong conception that we're supposed to get rid of. People in the West aren't too concerned about future lives. However, I'm not just saying that Christianity is bad and Buddhism is good. If you study religion, you'll come to your own conclusion. Through your own experience, you'll prove to yourself that Buddhism is correct and other teachings are not. You'll prove to yourself what's right and what's wrong. Within Buddha Dharma itself, there are 4 types of different doctrine that I mentioned at the beginning: the Vaibhashika, Sautrantika, Chittamatra, and Madhyamaka. The view of the Sautrantikas negates that of the Vaibhashikas. The view of the Chittamatrans negates that of the Sautrantikas. And the view of the Madhyamakas negates that of the Chittamatrans. Thus, even within Buddha Dharma, there are 4 doctrines whose views differ from each other. In other words, as long as a view is imperfect, it can always be negated or contradicted by one that's more correct. So I think he's saying he's not being sectarian when he says that Buddhism is better than Christianity, because within Buddhism, there's the Vaibhashika view, like the Vaibhashika and the Sautrantikas are Hinayana views. So from Mahayana views, they're wrong. So even within Buddhism, he's saying there are wrong views, and that from the Madhyamaka view, the Chittamatra view is wrong. And even within Madhyamaka, there's the Svatantrika and the Prasangika. So from the Prasangika view, the Svatantrika view is wrong. But the purest view in Buddhism is the Prasangika Madhyamika. So that's the view of Nagarjuna and Chandrakirti and Shantideva and Lama Tsongkhapa and, His Holiness the Dalai Lama and Lama Yeshe, Lama Zopa Rinpoche. So that's the one we should try to understand and realize, the Prasangika view of emptiness. The Dharma that came from India to Tibet contains both Sutra and Tantra. If you really want to understand all these teachings, you have to become fluent in the Tibetan language, its vocabulary, grammar, and so forth. Anyway, you have the link to this teaching on our website and in the book, and so there's a bit more of this concluding remarks, and then there are some questions and answers that you'll find. So I encourage you to take a look at that, because we don't have time to go into it here. Okay, so that was a very quick and ignorant overview of the lamrim. So, I don't think I've really been able to clarify much, but hope I can point you in the right direction where you can find proper teachers and proper teachings and, understand the actual meaning of the lamrim. And, while, this class is probably not much benefit to you, it's certainly benefit of me. It helps me try to clarify my understanding. So thank you for the opportunity.